Hello, friends. I am so happy to have a moment to make some videos because life has been very, very, very insane the last few weeks. Not necessarily in a bad way, just in a really busy way. So, I'm going to make 3 videos today, but I'm not going to post them all so that I can space them out. I may also do a little update on my book in a little bit. But what I wanted to share with you today are some nature-based decks, tarot and oracle. Partly because this has just been something that's calling me lately. Maybe I'm hyper aware of nature because of the craziness that nature has been demonstrating lately. Or it also comes out of my kind of my love affair with decks that don't have a whole lot of people in them. I'm looking at the decks in front of me, and a lot of them don't, or they're Marseille. So I'm gonna start with I'm gonna go through just a handful of decks. There are walkthroughs, I think, of all of these out there, and if you want me to sort of do a full expansion on any of these, I will. I'm gonna start with 2 that are kind of getting honorable mentions in this videos purely because they are so profoundly popular. I probably don't even need to show them. So the first is The Wild Unknown, which I feel like everybody knows, and love it or hate it. It's sort of the premier nature-based deck, and it was the first one that I had, and I really love it. I'm not using it as much as I did, but this is a deck, in fact, this very copy of the deck, you can see the box is getting kind of worn, usually is in my backpack with my, either my Jean Noblet Tab Marseille or my Marshmallow Marseille. So I usually carry these 2 decks around, or those 2 decks around with me. So honorable mention only because it's so popular to The Wild Unknown. The other one that gets an honorable mention, and I didn't even bother to put it in order, is the Pagan Otherworlds. Primarily because its pips are very, very nature-based, but still kind of Rider-Waite-Smith. There's no people in them except for the courts. You can see I'm using reversals with this deck because I kind of consider it a pip deck, which I do use reversals for. There are people in the majors. I have come around a lot on this deck in a way that I hadn't actually anticipated on doing. I like it. It has it has the thing with me that I sort of wish weren't the case, which is that all the people in it are white. And again, I know I get comments sometimes sort of bitching at me for saying that, but look, the world doesn't look like one thing, and I want decks that look like the world. And I recognize it's reflecting a particular path, but again, it's worth noting that the ancient Celts didn't have tarot, and so why can't a modern reflection of that include something a little more diverse? Anyway, I have said that many, many times. I'm going to keep saying it because hopefully at some point I will convert the skeptics out there. Let's look at a few decks that actually have no people in them. They are entirely nature-based. And let's start with... I'm going to start with the reason I'm actually making this video. So this is the Animal Totem Tarot, which I got very, very recently. And it's illustrated by Eugene Smith. Thank you, Llewellyn, for putting the illustrator's name up front and center. I have been drawn to this deck for a while, and for a handful of reasons never picked it up. One is that I hate the back, although seeing the back in person, it actually doesn't look as bad as I thought it did. So the back, for some reason, I just found really kind of a turn off. Another reason is that I just had other decks that were higher up on my wish list. I've really, as a reader, when I'm reading for people or reading for myself, I've really sort of gone over to the dark side, so to speak, of Marseille decks or similar. So the Pagan Otherworlds is the most kind of Rider-Waite-Smith one that I've got on my table at the moment, on my desk. So I've got the Tildwick, which I've struggled with. I've got my Jean Noblet, my Marshmallow Marseille, and the Wild Unknown. Those are the ones that have been sort of in front of me that I'm reaching for when I'm reading for people. But I I was in Barnes & Noble yesterday. Yesterday? No, a couple days ago. And I saw the deck there, and I said, I could get this cheaper on Amazon. Anyway, I just went and grabbed it. The point of the video is not about me making up my mind. So, I did buy it. Now, when I was in Barnes & Noble, there were two different sort of editions, I guess you could say, of this deck. One of them was this, which is this really like sturdy hard box, with the magnetic enclosure. And the other one was the Llewellyn box that I'm more familiar with, which is kind of that flimsy version with like the book and then the inset inside for the cards. I could not remember which is the one I should be avoiding and the one I should be getting. I know that people are sort of complaining a lot about Llewellyn's cardstock. Cardstock won't make or break a deck for me. I love really good cardstock, don't get me wrong. But I have a lot of decks that have really shitty cardstock, and it doesn't bother me much. This cardstock is not good. It is very, very thin. That said, whatever. You know what I mean? So I got this deck after months and months and months of hemming and hawing over it, watching Kelly from the Truth and Stories video on it, and even sort of chatting about it during the live chats. And finally I decided, you know what, and actually I went back and forth in the store. I put it back, and then I picked it up, and then I put it back, and I got in line, and then I went and got it and got back in line, and then I went and put it back, and then I went and got, just like one of those days. All of that, hemming and hawing to discover that I really, really like what's in here a lot. I think it's exceptional. I'm just going to throw that out there. First of all, Eugene Smith, beautiful artwork. Well done there. Lisa Robertson's book is excellent. I think that this is a deck, if anyone out there has been hemming and hawing over getting, I say get it. I say if you're looking for a first deck and you like animals, or you like animal energy, or you don't like Rider-Waite-Smith's traditional images, but you do like the Rider-Waite-Smith system, this is it. I think that this is, jumped to the top of a list of decks I would recommend if somebody said, what's a good first deck? Partly because the deck itself is great, but also because of the book. So I have to give credit. This is a beautifully packaged deck. There's the lifting ribbon to get the book and the cards out. So really effective. A nice inset here so that the cards won't slip in. As I mentioned, the cardstock is flimsy AF. You know what I mean? It is about the flimsiest cardstock I've ever seen. That said, whatever. You know what I mean? So I'm going to put this aside for a second. This book is excellent, excellent, excellent. I think that if you're coming to tarot for the first time and you're looking for a deck and book set, this is it. 100%. Especially if you are looking for a deck that's sort of people-free or that can work for a diverse audience, because there's no people in this deck. It's all animals. She's done an incredible job writing this book. Because I've been working with tarot for a long time, there are different interpretations of the cards that... Can you even see this? No, let me reduce the exposure a little bit. There we go. I've obviously come up with different interpretations over the years. That said, the way that she has constructed... So the first chapter is about tarot. The second chapter is about animal totems, animal guides, animal archetypes, and how she defines them. She gets into sort of an intro of like just things you should know about the deck and what you can do with it, and then she goes into the major arcana. The structure of the book is every card in the deck gets a full page illustration and a page or two or three even, because there often are note spaces for the card. You get a message from the animal, you get a description of the card, and then you get sort of divinatory meanings by category. So business and career, family and relationships, health and well-being, and some journal prompts if you do a daily draw. What is so impressive to me about this book is that the line she is able to draw between the animal she chose and the energy of that animal and the energy of the card is 99.9% excellent. And if you are new to tarot, we'll create a mnemonic device that's going to help you, I think, remember this to for any tarot reader. It takes time to study, right? You're right out of the, for most folks, right out of the box, it takes time and energy. So I would say that studying this book as a new reader, if this is your first deck, you are going to have to sort of come to the book and you're going to have to reference it, and I would say even study it, and this is to a degree kind of an old-fashioned way of learning, or just to kind of memorize definitions. That said, I think because she has created this sort of mnemonic of the animal totem, it's going to be easier for you to remember, for example, that the fox goes into the snow to sort of pull out resources, for example, or the Black Widow as being sort of someone who doesn't need other people's opinions. She has all of the skill and all of the stuff internally within her, and she doesn't need the outside world judging her. You know what I mean? She doesn't care. She knows what she's making is her purpose. It's an excellent book. There are a few cards where I sort of scratched my head in terms of their connection. Love this moon card. Owls are a big thing for me, like a lot of people. They're very popular, but ever since I was a child, owls have been a part of my life, both in ways I've liked and not. I remember my mother macrameed an owl and hung it in my bedroom when I was a kid, and I was so terrified of it I started screaming, and I made her remove it. But then, my love affair with owls my grandmother, when I was very young, knitted me a sweater with an owl on it, and it was like my favorite thing. Anyway, love that moon. The Judgment card with the reindeer. I've had to read this description a few times, and I'm not quite making the connection between Judgment and the reindeer, but that is, far and away an exception to the rule in this book. The Minor Arcana gets a lot of attention. Each one, again, gets a page illustration and a page or more of description and divinatory meanings with space for notes. The choices that she's made, to me, take the sort of meanings of, not necessarily Waite's meanings, but Pamela Coleman Smith's sort of subtext of the images, and she creates such oftentimes new, fresh, but totally connected to that Waite Smith system meanings that are just kind of breathtaking. She goes with the courts before, and the courts, by the way, excellent. Again, I think this is a perfect deck for a beginner. I think it's great for anyone who's been reading for a while too, but this will give you mnemonics for remembering the King of Swords as an eagle. I won't read the message here, although this is a good device too. The King of Swords sits atop the world, and from where he sits, the world appears barren, yet looks can be deceiving. To harness the energy of the king, one must learn to still one's mind and drop away that which is non-essential. For the mind should not only be required to focus on one thing at a time, From atop his mountain peak, it is easy for the eagle to focus on his present moment. Up there where the air is thin, time ceases to exist. The clouds block out the sun, so there is no way of telling day from night. This is a good thing, for it gives the mind one less thing to obsess over, or rather one less distraction. The King of Swords knows that once his mind is clear and the decision has been made, he must plunge back down to earth, as being this high is only temporary. The lesson is to leap with purpose, clarity, and precision, knowing that no matter what, you have the ability to change course, navigate any and all obstacles, and ultimately hit your mark without effort. That is the clear focus of the king that is driving the energy of the eagle, and that's the King of Swords. And I think it's an excellent embodiment of the king, using non-human metaphors and energies to create a very human experience. Let's see. One of them that I thought was kind of great was the Three of Swords, if I'm not mistaken. The three, it has a pretty similar negative energy, the Three of Swords. Yeah, here it is. So it's an elephant. I'll read this one too. Let me read the whole thing. There is something to be said for taking a moment and knowing what hurts. Pain itself is not a problem. Not knowing what to do with that pain, however, is where you get into trouble. Loss is a very important part of this physical world. You cannot have new life without death, nor can you gain without loss. So in this still moment, bow your head and honor all that was, is, and is on its way. Message from the elephant. The Three of Swords is one of those in-your-face kind of cards, just like the image of the elephants. There is a misconception in today's world that happiness somehow means the exclusion of all other feelings that are considered downers. Grief is probably the most misunderstood of all those downer emotions, and the elephant is here to show you that it is not only okay and natural to grieve, but it is absolutely necessary to do so. Elephants will honor any and all fallen members, even if it is not one of their own pack. This honoring of life and death is really what the grief cycle is all about. For in order to move from where you have been to where you want to go, first you must honor the fallen. The lost hurt pieces of the self that are no longer needed will be missed, but they are in no way helpful to you, to the you that you are becoming. The Three of Swords balances the three energies of past, present, and future. Right now, in this moment, all time exists, along with all loss and all that which will be gained. And then it goes into, again, her divinatory meanings. We still get that sadness, we still get that sense of loss that we get in Pamela Coleman Smith's image, in the traditional Waite Smith, but it's she doesn't shy away from the shadow, but she's also like, look, this is life. So you can't avoid that shit, but it's important, and you're gonna have to have that in you. So I think this is incredible. The book is certainly great. And I have to say, this is one of the few tarot guidebooks that came with a deck that I've actually sat down and read all the way through. I generally don't. This deck kind of needs it. But let me get in here and we'll just kind of look at the cards a little bit. Again, there are walkthroughs of this. Kelly has one. Again, this is the back. I don't love it, honestly, but it's really not as bad as I thought it was when I saw it on video. So if you're looking at this and thinking, oh, that's terrible, it's actually not as bad as I thought it was when I initially saw the deck on videos. The Magician. The art is really, really, really nice. It's really fantastic. And again, the choices that she's made for the archetypes of the trumps. The Polar Bear is an interesting one. You definitely need to read it. But it's about sort of tradition and safety kind of being at risk in the Polar Bear's world, which is really interesting. The Swans. The Chariot. This is one thing that, when I read the book, I sort of understand why the Chariot is what it is and the Strength is what it is. For some reason, I feel like I will mistake the Strength card for the Chariot, because it's a cart being pulled, but if I'm paying attention, I shouldn't do that. The Hermit is a grasshopper. The Wheel of Fortune is a ladybug. Justice is a crane. Don't love the Temperance card. It's a little kind of Lisa Frank for my taste, but it's fine. The Termite Tower is really interesting as the tower. Love This Moon. Again, I'm sort of skipping through, and you can see how thin the cards are because I'm able to do that relatively effortlessly. So I think this is a beautiful, beautiful deck. I'm really glad that I wound up buying it. The Skunk. It's a very sweet message in that card, actually. So she manages to find in the negative cards some positive, and she manages to remind us in the positive cards that there's some shadow. So I think in terms of a balanced deck, Lisa Robertson and Eugene Smith have come up with something really fantastic. So I can't recommend this deck enough. I haven't really gotten to work with it yet. In fact, I haven't even shuffled it yet, because I wanted to do this walkthrough. In fact, let's see how it shuffles, because this is that famously bad Llewellyn cardstock. I mean, it shuffles great. That's the nice thing about thin cardstock. I can't decide if this deck wants to be edged or not. It does look a little sort of unfinished, but actually because it's borderless on both sides, it sort of creates its own edging, which isn't that bad. Let me zoom out. Fix the exposure. So it shuffles really well. I probably would not want to have these near a glass of water, being the klutz that I am. Yeah, it shuffles great. I think that if you are going to work with the book for this, and that's not a bad thing, you may want to do small spreads initially to sort of explore the book, partly to explore the book and its connection to the cards, and partly because there is so much in the book that you're going to want to kind of dig into and understand, and transforming that into an answer to a question, if you're asking a question, could take some journaling and some time. So I would likely probably start with some small spreads. This shuffle's great. Yes. All right. Let's see how it looks in a spread. The Two of Wands. The Queen of Pentacles is great. She's a pig, and again, like, you know, pig is traditionally an insult. She talks about why that's nonsense in the deck. So it looks really nice. I just think it's fantastic. And again, you can interpret this using whatever system you use already. If you're using Rider-Waite-Smith, you can use that. If you're using a numerological approach, you can use that. I don't think the pictures are actually particularly distracting in many ways. But, you know, you have that added layer of the animal energy. And the messages in it. So anyway, that's that deck. So I think it's fantastic. I really, really recommend it. If you're looking, you know, if you have a friend who's sort of looking to get into reading and they don't know what to do, they don't know what to get, or you want to get them a deck, I say this is a great one. I'm going to move more quickly through the rest because I have a tendency to ramble. So the next one is Tarot of Trees, which I've talked about before, and I really, really like it. There is a guidebook with this one too, but I actually haven't read it. So this one probably wants to be zoomed in a little bit, because this is a small deck. This is playing card size. And this is the box it comes in. Oh, that's the back. So this is the back. Love the back. I think it's really beautiful. I think it's a winner. It comes with an extra card called Regeneration. I do not generally keep that shuffled in. And then it comes with the artist information. So this is the 3rd edition of this deck, 2015. I don't know if this version is still in print. I don't know if there's another version now. But I really love it. This is also Rider-Waite-Smith inspired. It's all trees. Again, there's no people in it. This is the cover of the box. The High Priestess. The Empress. The Emperor. What's genius about this deck is the way that she's managed to capture the energy of the archetypes without human archetypes or even animal archetypes in it. You know what I mean? So you get a very loving energy from these trees, even though the Chariot, the sort of wind in autumn. Gosh, it's beautiful. Strength, this tree kind of existing on the side of a mountain. The Hermit has a lamp in it. You know what I mean? Like, if you know tarot at all, this deck is going to be super easy to read with. You don't necessarily need the guidebook. The inverted tree is the Hanged Man. Death is really kind of devastating in this deck. Temperance, Devil. Let's look at some of the minors, because the minors are illustrated. It's not a pip deck. You do get an energy of... Oh, see, I went right to the quartz. So you get an energy of the Five of Cups, as you do in Pamela Coleman Smith's art, but it's not... There's no people in it. There's one sort of humanoid-looking figure in the deck, but that's it. And it's not. It's a tree, but it has, like, a human shape to it. So this is, like, a nice... You know, if you're interested in decks that might be, like, a little on the pip edge, but you want to ease in, this would be a nice way to do it. And it's just a really... I mean, the art is great. There are a couple cards that I find a little cute for my taste, but... and again, I'm sort of sick of the Three of cards looking like that. So I'm always interested when an artist finds a solution that's not that. But in a deck this clever, I think you forgive that. And again, many people like that image. So, and I'm just like, there's got to be another way to say the same thing, in my opinion. So anyway, so this is Tarot of Trees. I think it's fantastic. It's a self-published deck, so I got this on Etsy. I'm looking to see on the tarotoftrees.com. So I did edge this one because it's got black borders on both sides. I edged it in black. Looks nice. So those are the two tarot decks I have, along with the two honorable mentions. Then there's a couple others I'm just going to mention briefly because I've been working with them in their way to varying degrees. The first one is so popular, again, I won't go into too much. This is the medicine cards. I did trim this deck, and I actually kind of wish I hadn't. It's the one time I did that, and I'll tell you why. The card size is so large that it's actually difficult. These are the extra cards. It's so difficult that it's so large that it's difficult for me to shuffle. So I was having to side shuffle it, so I trimmed it, but they're actually still so large that it's kind of hard for me to riffle shuffle the normal way. So I, in fact, still side shuffle, and it actually side shuffles really well. Another deck with sort of flimsy cardstock. This one I didn't put back in order because I've been working on it. This is a deck that the book asks for reversals. It doesn't look bad trimmed. I mean, I think it looks great. I weirdly kind of liked it the way it was. I liked that size. I just wanted to make it easy to shuffle. I did edge this. It's impossible to see, but I used two different colors, and it actually looks like the same color, sadly. Oh well. Anyway, I think this is popular enough that I don't have to say a whole lot about it. The book itself, I'm still working through. I did do the horseshoe spread in it that sort of explores your totems, and I'm just sort of doing a little bit of reading about that. I've been doing a little bit of reading in general about Indigenous American spirituality for various reasons. One of them is that my grandfather on my mother's side was half, I believe, Narragansett. And he was so embarrassed of that, and obviously was treated so badly because of it, that he never really talked about it. And so we don't really know all that much about it. My grandmother knows a little bit, but, and that's not an uncommon story in American families, you know what I mean, especially in the Northeast. And one of the other sad things to me about that is that the eastern part of the country, those tribes are really only known through casinos. You know what I mean? Like, not a lot of the history was preserved. And I don't know why, but one of my instincts is that they were the first to go, frankly. So a lot of what you read about when you read about Native American spirituality is kind of Western and Southwestern U.S. So I'm, this isn't the topic of this video, but I am, just doing a little reading. This is a book. It's just sort of a college book, so it's a little heady, but this is Native American spirituality in the Northeastern Canada. It actually doesn't cover what I think my grandfather's origins were, but still, it's something. So that's the medicine cards. That's an all-animal deck. It's an oracle deck. It's not just for that initial reading where you find your animal totems. You can do readings with it, but it's a reading. I probably wouldn't offer readings with it to others because it's sort of an experience of like pulling the cards and working with the book, and that's a little odd. These last two, it's not a little odd. It's just a little odd for me to do a reading for someone else with. These last two decks were actually on my desk for a couple weeks, and I finally just got to work with them, and I'm having really mixed feelings about them. So let me come back to this one because that's the one I'm having the most mixed relationship with. This is the Celtic Tree Oracle, with illustrations by Vanessa Card. It was written by Liz and Colin Murray. Now, I am, not of Celtic origin, although with red hair I look like I am. So I've actually kind of stayed away from this stuff because it just felt like it wasn't my culture to work with. That said, this was recommended to me, and I really liked the images on the cards. It's got a nice hardcover book with it. Oh my god. It's not super thick, but there's a lot of information in here. And this is based on ohms. So the kind of alphabetical, letters. I don't really know a whole lot about ohms. So one reason why I haven't really gotten too deep into this book is because when the book says that it's a system of divination, it really is a system that has to be learned and referenced. And so I didn't quite understand that when I got it, and now having it, the time for me to sit and really learn an entirely new system is not, it hasn't been there. The question becomes whether or not I'm ever going to make that investment, and I'm not sure. So I put these up for trade, and then I instantly kind of took it down and said, no, let's wait. But if anyone watching this is like, I really need that deck, and I have something you're going to love, let's trade, I'd be happy to talk about it. But this is not out of print. It's not hard to get. I will say this, like, the set itself is really cool, right? Because it comes with this book, and it comes with sort of a little notepad full of, it actually reminds me of geomancy, where you sort of use, the reading, you kind of create this sheet that helps you interpret the cards. And then there's like a spread, and then there's these cards themselves, which I'll look at in a second. So there's this fold-out sheet that kind of shows you how to do the reading, the record sheet. And that's what that little booklet is full of. And then the cards themselves, you actually, zoom in again. You actually cannot see in a video how colorful these are. They look pretty muted. They are, but there's color here, and that's beautiful. So you get the Celtic name and then the name of the tree. There are numbers on 13 of the cards because they correspond to the 13 months in the wheel of the year. So you basically get the tree, you get some energy about the tree. These little dots mean something. You get the ohms. Again, this is going to take some time for me to study, and it's going to take some time for me to have time to study this. So I'm not sure how, this isn't a deck that you just pick up and read with. So I'm not sure yet how it's going to go for me. Even though I love the cards themselves, I wish it were a little more intuitive, but on the other hand, structure can be very useful, and I think in this case, it's just, in my case, not a matter of disliking structure. It's, in my case, not having a whole lot of time to learn it. But the reason I wish it were a little more intuitive is because the cards I actually really like so much. So, like, if they had a keyword on them and I could sort of use them in more of a Lenormandy way, at the moment I might really like that. But, back to the beginning. So we'll see about that one. We'll see how I manage to carve out some time, whether I can make that happen. I would like to, though, but every time I say, oh, I'm going to have time when this thing is over. Oh, I'm going to have time when this class is done. Oh, I'm going to have time when this project is over. Oh, I'm going to have time when I finish my draft of my book. Then life gets in the way, and that doesn't happen. So this last one is one of the most strange experiences I've had as a consumer of decks. So, allow me to preface this by saying everything I say here is my own opinion. And there are other people out there who have different experiences and different minds and manage to internalize and receive information in different ways and draw lines that I can't, and I can draw lines that they can't, because that's how people are, and thank God, right? Because we don't need one reader in the world. That's my disclaimer. Now, this deck is packaged beautifully. This is called the Wisdom of Trees Oracle, Inspirational Cards for Wisdom and Guidance by Jane Struthers. Jane Struthers is the author of the book. The artwork is by Marilla Allwood. Packaged beautifully, like I said. It comes in this sort of box with a pull-out inner box. Then this really beautifully designed book. And the cards sit in this great box, again, sort of like the the animal totems cards, and they are exceptionally beautiful. The artwork, it's all trees, except for the last suit is fruits, nuts, and seeds, I think. So, but again, they're all sort of largely images of trees. These cards, I think, are so beautiful, and the packaging is so beautiful. That's actually why I took the deck down for trade, because I thought, I really like these cards. My problem lies with the book. And that's frustrating to me because obviously the author of the book was clearly the instigator of the project. People may know this, I don't know if you care. Usually what happens with these things and why the artists' names are traditionally not that visible is because the artist sells their work essentially. It's work for hire. It's like being a ghostwriter of a celebrity autobiography. You're essentially, it's what Pamela Coleman Smith did in theory, except somehow we learned at some point to remember her name. But if you think back to the beginning, it was called the Rider-Waite deck. Smith came over time because of the community recognizing the work she did. But that was work for hire. She sold that work knowing she would have no rights to it. And when a tarot deck is instigated not by an artist, but by a writer or a thinker or philosopher, what happens a lot of the time is that the artist is selling their right to that art to the writer or to the publisher. In the same way that, like, someone who writes a Excel for Dummies book, they may be a writer in their own right, but they're selling that writing to the Dummies company. So they don't own the copyright in most cases. An example of that wasn't that is actually the Wildwood Tarot, where the artist maintained the right for her deck, for her artwork, and didn't re-up it. You know what I mean? So a lot of the reasons why you don't see the artist's name, or it's kind of hidden, is because they sort of sold their right to the author or the publisher. Whether or not that's right or wrong, I am a believer in putting the artist name front and center, even if it was work for hire, because when we're buying a deck, 99% of the time it's for the cards. And I say that as a writer, you know what I mean? But I don't buy a lot of tarot decks for books. In fact, the only one I've even considered buying for the book is the, not the Robert and Place Vampire Tarot, but the other one. I can't remember the artist's name, the writer's name. But I've heard that book is exceptional, an exceptional guidebook. But I don't have any interest in the deck itself. This book is frustrating. And I'm just going to be honest and talk about why. The potential for this deck is so huge, and I had such high hopes for it, but the cards don't have any meaning on them other than the name of the tree. You need the book. And to someone who isn't as uptight as I am, this may not bother them, but where things get... The introduction is great. The format is great. I mean, it's actually beautifully designed. It feels really nice in the hand. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a nice book. She talks about how to use this for reading. She has some spreads in it. She talks about how the card works in a spread. It's when we get into the tree descriptions themselves and the meaning. So each tree gets a keyword. And then we get its sort of Latinate name. And then we get the Deva message of the tree. We get sort of a history of the energy of the tree, or what it represents in cultures, or its native land. We get some interesting facts about it. And then we get an upright and reversed divination. Yeah, that's kind of better. So far, so good, right? The problem that I have with this book is that many, many times the relationship between the keyword, the description, and the card meaning is I can't figure it out. Let me see if I can find... I probably should have prepared this. Some of them are great, but many of them drive me nuts. And I can't... I'm not even gonna, you can see for yourself if you buy this deck. Enlightenment. See, this one makes sense. The Pipple makes sense because it's the Bodhi tree. So I get its keyword. I get its relationship to the card. Persistence makes sense for the bristlecone pine because it's about persistence, and they last, and they have a long lifespan. There are others. Where Again, I'm not going to get in. I shouldn't get into it. I see now I'm going to be obsessed. Yeah, anyway. And I should have come armed with these things, because it's bothering now, because I feel people say I'm being nitpicky. Like, here, purity for the cherry tree. Purity is the keyword, and the message says, think of my beautiful flowers glinting in the sunshine. Imagine them dancing in the breeze to the signal of death and winter, the death of winter and the birth of spring. I'm connected with the cycles of nature and can show you how to become one with them. Like, that's got nothing to do with purity. That's got to do with cycles. So, and there's a lot of that in here again, I should have looked at it ahead of time. I just got so angry when I was reading this book, because I thought, this isn't helpful. It's not, the keyword and the message and the description and the divinatory meanings don't connect to me. Now, this could be a case where the writer actually knows so much about this stuff, and then in the editing process, they edited out what would have been the connecting lines, right? But this is the thing I talk about a lot in learning in my day job. You have to teach to the person in the room who knows the least when you're training adults. If you're giving me a guidebook, you have to write it for the least intuitive person getting the deck. I have a hard time drawing connections between the meanings of the keywords and the descriptions of the messages and the descriptions of the cards for most of these. Now, all is not lost, because even though I find this book frustrating, I'm just being honest, I do. What I might do is actually do my own. I like the cards so much, I may actually do my own research on the trees and come up with a keyword for myself and write it on the card, and then just not even worry about the book. Because the art, again, is the backs are nice. The art itself is really kind of amazing. There's just something really soothing about it. I love the idea of a tree oracle where you're really working with, what the tree has meant to communities that have survived off of them. Because trees are one of the things that have given people life. I like the idea that there are 4 suits. Their roots, trunks, leaves, and flower, fruit, and seeds. And that to me, is really... So I feel like there's a system that could be developed for this on our own that could be useful. Oh, the other thing is that there's 2 cards with the same keyword. There's 2 cards with the keyword of harmony in here. I don't know why that bugs me, but it does. I guess because I just had really high hopes for this. I'm just waiting for someone to bitch about how I was mean to this deck because I didn't like it and other people love it. That's the thing about taste. So, anyway. But if I didn't care, I wouldn't be struggling with it. I'd just, I'd just say screw it. Anyway, so those are these. I hope this was interesting and fun to watch and walk through, and stay tuned for more.